I'm going to get canceled for what I have to say about Mary Earps. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And it was NWSL Decision Day on Sunday. Allie, we've got kind of a juicy episode today, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. It's thoughts, opinions, feelings, controversies. It's everything that women's football has decided it's going to be this weekend.
When it rains, it pours, truly.
Yeah, because I thought we'd only have one controversial topic, which I sent you. And then a certain person decided they're going to enter their Hope Solo era and gave us another one. So
go on, tell the people what we're going to do this fine day.
This fine day, we are going to talk about NWSL Decision Day because the playoff places are not only set. We know who's got the home draws. We know who's going to have to go away to that really tough one against Kansas City. So we're going to break all of that down for you and how that happened. We are then going to take you around the world and give you a little bit of an insight of what's happened in some different leagues across the globe. And then it's Controversy City. We're going to start off with the Liz Eddy comments and the opinion piece that she did and how her team have responded to that. And then we're going across to my side of the pond and talking about the Mary Earps of it all, because how could we not?
This is the only thing that people need to know. Before we hit record, Allie just goes, I'm going to get canceled. I'm going to get canceled for what I have to say about Mary Earps. Well, let's get on with it then, Allie. Let's do it.
So let's start off with the actual football of it all and the NWSL, because the playoff places are finalised. Going into this weekend, positions 3 to 8 were still up for grabs. We only knew 1 and 2. And the big one was the 8th place, which was going to be between North Carolina Courage and Racing Louisville. And spoiler alert, it is Racing that have clinched that 8th spot. So let's see how it happens, Sarah.
I mean, I think that Racing, how can you not be a fan of Racing Louisville right now? I genuinely think they're the new darlings of the NWSL. The question I want to ask once we talk about this game is Racing the biggest candidate to do a 2023 Gotham FC, kind of like sneak into the playoffs and then go exceptionally far? And I really think that they are, and we'll talk about it. But yes, Allie, let's set the scene. A win for Louisville, and they're in. Halftime, though, it was tied 0-0 between Racing Louisville and Bay FC, and North Carolina was winning big over Gotham FC. And if those results had stood, Racing would have missed out on the playoffs once again in 9th place. North Carolina would have gotten in. But it was the rookie Ella Haas who got the goal in the 48th minute, just 3 minutes into halftime, or into the second half. It changed everything. It was her first NWSL goal. It was massive. The fact that it came that close to the start of the second half, I mean, it changed everything. Like, this is a team that really had a hard time closing out games throughout the season. So many last-minute goals conceded. But this time around, they got it done in the final weekend. They go in rolling into the playoffs, not just in 8th place, in 7th place.
Oh, so they've avoided that dreaded Kansas City matchup, because that's the one that everybody was talking about with 8th, is because nobody wants that. Nobody wants to go into Kansas, because we've talked about it, what a fortress they have made that stadium. So you don't want that to be your playoff position.
You certainly don't. And we'll talk about that because it's Gotham who is actually going into Kansas City. We'll talk about that when we come on to the North Carolina Gotham game next. But, I mean, Racing Louisville, I mentioned Ella Haas, the rookie. There's so much to discuss about this team. Like, first and foremost, this team just broke a bunch of franchise records, including the fact that this was the first time they've ever made the playoffs. Plus, they broke the franchise record for the number of wins, points, goals, and road wins. But maybe the biggest thing of all, Allie, is we have to talk about Bev Yanez, because what a story for her as a player, now into a coach. Just incredible. I mean, again, there's so many things, but I think we need to spend some time on Bev.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because she is the first to be part of postseason, both as a player and a coach. We saw her as the assistant coach for Gotham in 2022 to 2020. No, 2021 to 2022. And then in the November of 2022, Racing Louisville named her as the assistant coach for the upcoming season, and then was appointed head coach in 2023, which was a massive leap for her. And look what she's managed to do, because Racing Louisville always felt like the team that almost could maybe bridesmaid, not the bride. And then this season, let's be honest, a lot of people wrote them out because they kept conceding really late and having results not go their way. But you know what? They dug in. They got the result that they needed when it mattered this weekend. And have they got the magic M word? Have they got the momentum to keep them going through playoffs?
I really think they do. I'm jumping on the Racing Louisville bandwagon here. I was in New York when Bev was the assistant coach over at Gotham FC. And so I had the pleasure meeting her a couple times, of listening to her, because she frequently actually, which is I think very uncharacteristic of assistant coaches, she frequently actually came and spoke at post-game press conferences. So we got to hear her speak a lot. I got to hear her speak a lot in person. We got to see how players interacted with her, how they spoke about her. First and foremost, it was like she always came in with her kids. It was always so family-centered, and all of the players adored her. And we talk about identity. Like you mentioned, this Racing Louisville team, Allie, like they finally have it. And that it of an identity is so hard to create. And she's done it. And she's done it in a very short amount of time at Racing. Like you think about her being hired as the head coach in November of 2023. She's had 2 years to a T, and they're in the playoffs for the first time. And she's done such a great job with this squad. All of the players, just when you hear the current players talk about her, they only have the best things to say. They all say the same thing. And I mean, their captain, Erin Wright, she's been such a great leader. She played against Bev when Bev was in the league as a player. And now they have this great coach-captain relationship, and everything seems to be falling into place. They have this great head coach that they buy into, that they believe in. They have a captain who has so much experience. And then all of that is surrounded by just so much young talent. I mean, we mentioned, of course, that goal scored by Ella Haas, the rookie, Emma Sears. Like, there's so much good, and it feels like it's just the start for Racing Louisville.
So they're now one of your favorites to maybe possibly go a bit further?
Kinda. I mean, like, so I mentioned their captain, Erin Wright. She talked about part of what Bev has, like, instilled is actually oddly very similar to what we heard in the mentality of the old Gotham team that I referenced that won in 2023, which is there's no, like, 11, right? Everybody contributes to the win, and they have a deep bench. And the captain, Erin Wright, basically said, I'm really proud of the fact that no matter who goes in the game, like, nothing changes. Nothing falls off. The quality doesn't fall off. And when you have a team that thinks like that, I think truly anything is possible. Plus the fact that they avoided that dreaded number 8 spot going into Kansas City, like you said, Allie, like, I think that is massive, because they don't just avoid that. They hop to the opposite side of the bracket, which means that if they do meet Kansas City, they meet Kansas City in the final. Granted, they are going to play the number 2 Washington Spirit at Washington, but we'll come on to that.
So, obviously, racing in means that North Carolina Courage are out, which is, first off, wild to me, because North Carolina feel like a team that you just expect in the playoffs. Like, they're that sort of team. So the fact that they are not is absolutely wild to me. Now, they did everything they could. They won their game over Gotham 3-2, which we will get into the game of it all because it sounds insane. So, yeah, they got their win, but they miss out by playoffs by 1 point because Racing won their game. You know that Gotham wanted Racing to lose because it meant that they wouldn't have been in 8th. And they have got that dreaded Kansas City game for the first round. So let's talk about this actual game.
This game was insane, first of all. It was dumping rain in North Carolina. North Carolina was up 3-0 at one point. Gotham made a play for it at the end, got 2 goals back. North Carolina ended up winning 3-2. As you said, none of it really mattered. The game itself, like, North Carolina really played their hearts out, and Gotham honestly looked really bad. Just not going to sugarcoat it. It was a crazy finish, of course, but like the game was fantastic, but as soon as Racing scored that one goal, everything felt like it just simply didn't matter anymore in this match.
So does that mean you're worried about Gotham going into the playoffs if it was that poor of a performance?
Yeah, honestly, I think that this is like an important thing to talk about. You can look at this and say, well, it was the last game, it was dumping rain. That doesn't really that maybe doesn't indicate how well a team can play, because everything in soccer changes when it's dumping rain, and that field actually held up really well. I kept flipping to that game. By the way, I had 3 monitors out, and I kept flipping to that game on one of them to be like, is that pitch still holding up? It was. But yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about Gotham. I'm worried about the performance that they put in. And then knowing that they're now in 8th, having to go into Kansas City, and you can say what you want about it, but you mentioned the word momentum, Allie, and especially in the NWSL playoffs, momentum is huge. And no matter how you slice it, a loss at the end of the season like that, where you concede 3 goals, it's going to hurt.
We will focus on Gotham momentarily when we look at the playoff picture, but let's talk about North Carolina for a moment, because that's rough for them, because like I said, it's by a point. They were close all season, but they couldn't quite make it over the line in that last game.
I feel like that's the perfect description of their season. They never leveled up. They were at this exact type of play the whole season, and it kept feeling like, okay, and now it's coming, and it just never did. We talked so many times, Allie, about how they were literally at the playoff mark halfway through the season, and now it's the end of the season, and they are literally at 1 point below 8th place. So I don't know. They were right there. They couldn't get over the hump. I mean, we have to also look at the fact that this is a team that had a coaching change halfway through the season. But there's so many bright spots. I think it might hurt because they were so close, but also it just wasn't there. And now you can take the bright spots and move it along. Manaka, she's 21 years old. And you look at the type of season she had in this second half, and the future is so bright for this squad. Hopefully they have a head coach that they can depend on, rely on. And I mean, that's a whole other topic. We can dive into the PR of North Carolina once again having to let go of a head coach who was the successor to Paul Riley halfway through the season. But that's not what we're here to talk about. When you look at the fact that that's what they were dealing with this year and they still almost made the playoffs, I mean, I think you have to look at it the positive way like that.
So let's very quickly go through the other games, because they do affect how the playoff picture is looking. The big one is Orlando and Seattle. They drew, which means Orlando have clinched that home tie, which is going to be good for them. They are in 4th. They missed out to Portland with the 3rd, and that was just on goal difference. It was 1 goal between Portland and Orlando. I think the funniest thing is that Bug said in the post-game interview that they're just happy they don't have to travel.
Isn't that so funny that that's how it came out? I mean, they knew, Laura Harvey said, it's, before, they knew that this could happen before the game. So they knew going into Orlando, hey, there is a chance we just have to play Orlando again. And if so, we're not going to go back to Seattle. We're just going to stay here. So they're just setting up camp in Seattle. But it was fun to see her say that in the post-game interview. I think that she was just asked straight up, how do you feel about playing them again? And her answer was, well, it's nice that we don't have to travel. It'll be fun, though. I think of all the games, it's so fun to see that rematch back to back in the same place. Because first of all, that game was so much fun. And second of all, when I feel like we see this in Champions League a lot, you expect almost the same thing, but then you get a completely different game. And especially when the first game was a 1-1 draw, both of these teams are going to make adjustments. And I think this next game coming up that's going to have playoff, that is a playoff game, it's going to be a lot different.
No, absolutely. Portland got it done super early in their game over Houston Dash. They got goals in the 3rd and 35th minute.
Portland's hosting San Diego Wave. San Diego lost 2-1 to Kansas City, by the way. That was a singular game that was at a different time. So this was the game that we kind of knew the result of initially. It had very few implications because Kansas City obviously was always going to remain in the first spot. It was closer than I expected, really. But San Diego lost by 1 goal, and then they won the 6th place spot over Racing on goal differential. Those two were even on points, but they get the 6th place on goal differential, which is huge, which we're about to talk about when we talk about the playoff picture for this upcoming weekend, because it's the difference between going into Portland and going to Washington. And no disrespect to Portland, who's been really on one at the end of the season. I'd rather go to Portland than to Washington.
Speaking of Washington, they actually lost their last game of the season, 1-0 to Utah. Now, obviously, that doesn't impact the playoff picture. They were second. They were always going to remain in second. But again, we've talked about this word, the M word, momentum, and you're going into a playoff game with a loss under your belt. But is that going to really affect their picture going into the playoffs?
No. And I know that sounds contradictory to what I just said, because Gotham are going in off of a loss, but it's more than just a loss for Gotham. It's how they played. It's how they have played, in my opinion, in the last 4 or 5 games. Like, it's not just a 1-game thing for Gotham. For Washington, it felt like just a 1-game thing, to be honest. I think the bigger piece of Washington, as we get into, and let's just get into talking about playoff picture now, Allie, because we've got 4 games, we've got 4 matchups. We're obviously going to do predictions. So maybe we'll just start here, because the 2nd place Washington Spirit host the 7th place Racing Louisville. And this might be the most interesting matchup, in my opinion, because look, what hurts Washington more than a loss is not having Trinity Rodman. And it's been the same story with this Washington Spirit team for more than a year now, which is when they are healthy, they are arguably the best team in this league, and at the very least have a chance to take down the best team in this league. When they are not healthy, everything kind of changes. They aren't as much of a dominant force, and Trinity Rodman is a huge part of that.
Yeah, so the news that is coming out of Washington with Trinity is the fact that there is no update. There is no real timeline for when she's going to return. She sprained her MCL, which is obviously better than a tear, but it's still quite a impactful injury. So we do not know when she will be returned. So it's not going to happen for the playoffs.
Yeah. Should we just go through it? Should we start here, Allie? So it's the Washington Racing game. That one is on. This isn't chronological. I'm so sorry. That one's on November 8th. It's at 12 Eastern. Many players have complained about playing such an early game. At one point, the final was at 9 a.m., which is crazy. Anyways, this is at November 8th, 12 p.m., Washington hosting Racing. What do you think based on what I just said, Allie? It's Trinity Rodman out for Washington, but still so many stars, like a packed squad, stacked squad. And then it's Racing, who are obviously the underdogs, but they have the momentum. They obviously have the team identity and the self-belief.
I was going to say, my British heart loves an underdog. We always love an underdog over here in England. So my heart would love it to be Racing. Absolutely love them to knock off the 2nd spot, Washington. But I do think Washington will pull it out for something as important as the playoffs.
This is really tough, because I don't want to do it. I think this is going to be a really close game. I really do. I think that the high-power offense of Washington, it could lead this. This could be trouble. It might all hang on the Racing Louisville defense. We mentioned how they have conceded late goals all season. It does feel like they mentally overcame that hurdle, but you never know what could happen. Whatever. I'm going to say Racing. I'm on the Racing train. I'm going to stay on the Racing train. What's our next one, Allie? We'll stay on this side of the bracket. This is what we're calling the right side of the bracket. So we'll have those 2 teams facing off, and then the other 2 teams on this side of the bracket are going to be Portland hosting San Diego. That's the number 3 hosting the number 6 team. San Diego playing well against Kansas City in this final game of the regular season. Portland also finishing this season really strong.
I was going to say, I think Portland have picked up that momentum that we've been talking about. You know, they got their 3rd, they've got the home draw. So I'm giving it to the Thorns. I do think Portland will beat San Diego.
We've also spent a lot of time talking about Kansas City as a fortress. The original fortress was Providence Park. And I agree. I think you don't want to go into Providence Park. You just don't. So I think it'll be Portland. All right. To the other side of the bracket, to the left side, November 9th, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, it's the number 1 Kansas City against the number 8 Gotham FC. And this is fun, Allie, because Gotham have been in this place before. And despite how terribly they're playing, there's something to be said about having been in this 8th place playoff team before. Kind of like we're playing with house money mentality.
Yeah, no, again, Gotham are my team. You know, they've got the grit and determination. I do believe it. But Kansas have been so unstoppable this season that it would be a fool's bet to bet against Kansas City. So I'm going to give it to Kansas.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give it to Kansas City also. Moving along. November, I have to say, the only people, maybe even not even Gotham FC fans, would circle Gotham in this game. I'm not going to lie. Like, that's a tough one to circle Gotham on. All right, moving along. You said this is the most fun one, you think?
This is the fun one. This is going to be the fun one. It's Orlando versus Seattle. This is going to be on November 7th. Because we've seen them play recently, and they played a super close game. It was 1-1. Like, there is no real indication on who could take this. And so I think this is going to be the fun one.
This is the hardest one to pick, I think. It feels a little impossible. But what do you think, Allie?
I'm going Orlando. I am going Orlando.
You're a big Orlando fan.
I am a big Orlando fan. I've got a lot of big soft spot for Orlando, so I am going with Orlando. I think they could maybe keep their title.
Are you saying Orlando because of your head or because of your heart, though?
Both. I think that Orlando are the ones that will kick it up a gear, and Seattle seem to like fade away. And if their coach is using AI to predict their lineup.
That reference was Laura Harvey saying that she used AI in the offseason and asked ChatGPT what formation would beat each NWSL team, and then said she went with it.
So I am going to pick Orlando.
I think I'm going to pick Orlando, too, for 2 reasons. The first is that I think that they finished the regular season stronger. And we talked about the playoffs and momentum and how important it is. I think that matters. And then you couple that with playing at home, Seattle having to stay away from home. They're going to be on the road for over a whole week now. And I think that just plays in it just weighs on you. So I think it's Orlando as well. So the only one we differed on here was actually the Washington Racing game.
Yeah. It's very weird that we agree this much.
I know. Maybe should you just pick Seattle? No. I think when we get to the next round, because of the quarterfinals, when we get to the semifinals, I think we might have very different opinions. Real quick for everybody, everything is on a different, if you're listening or you're watching in the U.S., every single one of these games, of course, well, almost all of them are on different networks. Hooray for us. So I'm going to walk you through where everything is playing in the United States. The Friday, November 7th
Which I
game.
will be. I've just realized I'm going to be in the US for
That's
all of
right.
these games, so I can get to watch these live. I'm so excited.
You better. Allie's like, it's not at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So for those of you also listening, Allie is going to be in the U.S. and posting some fun stuff on our socials with Chris and Tim. So stay tuned for that. But Friday, November 7th, you listen as well, Allie, because you'll be here. That game is the number 4 Orlando hosting number 5 Seattle. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern. That one's on Amazon Prime. That stays true to the Fridays on Prime. So that's easy to remember. Next day is Saturday, November 8th. That is the number 2 Washington hosting the number 7 Racing. That is at 12 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Now, then the following day, Sunday, there's 2 games. Both of them are on ABC. So Kansas City and Gotham, and then Portland versus San Diego. Both of them on ABC. So just remember, Prime, CBS, ABC. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Scotland, and Rangers fall to 5th after a narrow defeat to Hearts this weekend. Glasgow City remain top after their emphatic 5-0 win over Aberdeen. Hibs are 2nd after their win over Partick Thistle. It's all to play for, however, next week, as it is the Old Firm derby as Rangers will take on Celtic.
Over to Mexico, Tigres and Pachuca are topping the table in La Liga MX, tying on points, wins, and losses. It's just a 9-goal difference that separates the two. America are close behind in 3rd, and Toluca and Guadalajara are rounding out the top 5.
To Germany, and a massive 4-1 win for Bayern keep them top of the league. Wolfsburg are in 2nd with their win over Hoffenheim, whilst dark horse Leverkusen are 3rd after their win this weekend.
And finally, to France, Lyon have kept their perfect start with 6 wins out of 6. PSG have remained in second with their win, and Fleury are up to third place.
So, keeping in the NWSL, a article appeared this week by Liz Eddy of Angel City. I'm going to be honest, wasn't massively familiar with her, so we'll leave that there. And it came up on my feed, and then I sent it to Sarah and was like, what the actual hell?
Yeah. Well, it was a tweet, and then the New York Post, I guess, saw it, and they were like, we like the hate that you're spitting out here. Let's publish this. And then the New York Post published it with a very controversial headline photo of an African player. So we'll get into that as well. Allie, let's talk about this. For those people who didn't read the tweet or read the article because it was ridiculous, let's just get into it right now. What happened?
So, it's called the W in the NWSL. And Liz Eddy basically went on a bit of a pity party, not going to lie, about how she'd been in the league for so many years and that she was struggling to see where it was going because there were clearly players who did not belong to play there because they were not women. And I use the term women in air quotes because that's what she's talking about. It's nonsense. We've gone through this many times over and over again. And it's just plain ridiculous.
Yeah. For those who don't know who she is, not that it totally matters, but yeah, she's been in the league really since it started with Western New York Flash. She spent a lot of time on loan elsewhere, but she's also been with North Carolina Courage, Gotham FC, Houston Dash, most recently Angel City since 2023. Definitely at the end of her career based on age and the fact that she's played 80 minutes total over the last 3 years. That says a lot as well. Oh, God, I don't even know where to begin here, Allie. Meg Linehan said something interesting and said that the only thing that she'll agree with Elizabeth Eddy on is that the league needs a policy. The league had a policy, and in 2021, it just quietly disappeared. Nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows why, but it did just quietly disappear. First and foremost, do you agree with that? Do you agree that there needs to be a policy?
I agree there does need to be a policy. There does, because it's now getting to the point where there's a lot of ambiguity, and I feel like the ambiguity is playing very well into certain demographics' hands. Demographics I don't agree with. However, we do get into dangerous territory, which is what we've got currently over here in the UK, which is the FA just put a blanket ban on. And we're talking about trans women playing in women's football, and that only affected really grassroots football, and it became a whole big mess of an issue playing in grassroots football. So there does need to be a policy. What that policy is, I don't know. I'm not paid the big bucks because, let's be honest, every policy we've had so far has been based off of white women. And white women's mechanics and white women's physiology. And it seems to continue to be that. And that's where I have an issue.
I think we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about the transphobia of it. We've talked about the racism of it. We've talked about how it intersects specifically in this topic. And we've talked about how all this viewpoint really does is weaponize what's really just a thinly veiled transphobia and racism that's actively causing harm to players and fans alike. When this tweet / New York Post article dropped, a lot of NWSL fans were kind of asking questions of Angel City. And what are you going to do about this, Angel City? This is a player on your team. You are a club that has actively said that you stand for inclusivity. And this is a player on your team and your organization who said this out loud. And let's talk about the reaction, because Sarah Gordon, the captain of Angel City, said in a press conference where she stands, and she spoke for the team. She said, I feel nervous because I am speaking for the team right now, and that says a lot. And we're going to play right now what Sarah Gordon said in response to all of this.
Well, first off, I just want to say that Going into this, I'm a little bit nervous because I think it's a big job to represent your team and speak for your team, and not just that, speak for others who this will be important to. We've all obviously seen the article that was written in the New York Post earlier this week, so I really want to start off by saying that that article does not speak for this team in this locker room. I've had a lot of combos with my teammates in the past few days, and they are hurt and they are harmed by the article, and also they are disgusted by some of the things that were said in the article, and it's really important for me to say that. And we don't agree with the things written for a plethora of reasons, but mostly the undertones come across as transphobic and racist as well. The article calls for genetic testing on certain players, and it has a photo of an African player as a headline, and that's very harmful. And to me, it's inherently racist, because to single out this community based on them looking or being different is absolutely a problem. And as a mixed woman with a Black family, I'm devastated by the undertones of this article. And I feel very protective of my teammates and this community who are also hurt by this, and that includes staff and everyone who is a supporter and a fan. And there are players in this league and in this locker room that are directly harmed by what was written in the article. So for that, I just want to say I am so sorry for anyone hurt by this or anyone harmed by this. And please know that I do speak for the team when I say we do support you. You don't have to look like me, you don't have to look like Ange, or you don't have to look like somebody from Orange County to be accepted and celebrated here. And it's really important that you know that that is the true message from this locker room and the team.
Sarah Gordon was sitting there, obviously had notes, said all of that. They didn't take any questions about it. They just put that statement out. Allie, first thoughts?
I think it's beautiful. I think it was a very well-crafted, beautiful statement. You can tell that specifically Gordon really meant it because of, as we've said, this is such a racist overtones. Talking about genetic testing of certain players. Like, are you calling for Emily Sonnet to be tested? Because she's quite built and she's quite a hench player. No, I don't think you are. I think you're going after the Barbara Banders and the Schwingers of this league. So I think that was a wonderful statement. I think it was great that the club did that. I know a lot of people were disappointed with the club's initial statement on social media because it was that generic. We know what one of our players said. We don't really agree with it, and we think that everybody should get along. And it didn't feel like it was not harsh enough, but it didn't feel like it was condemning what Eddy said. It was sort of like, we can agree to disagree, which in things like this, no, we can't.
We were going to talk about this potentially last week, but I think the tweet dropped on Monday when we were recording. And then in full disclosure, like, Allie and I have tackled these topics plenty and kind of all the time when they come into, I guess, like, come into play when something happens, when it's, I guess when something happens, when somebody says something transphobic or does something transphobic or something like that. And Allie, like, I guess we can cut this if you want, but I guess I think it's important to say, like, we've never hesitated to talk about it and share, obviously, our viewpoints, which are in full alignment with what Sarah Gordon said. And we've gotten a lot of hate for it. Like, Allie has had to deactivate their Twitter multiple times. I personally just don't log on as much anymore because of everything that we've dealt with over the years from this. But I think it's important. We decided, obviously, to talk about it because that was part of what we decided when we started this podcast, is like, these kind of things are extremely important, and mainstream media has to be really careful about what they say, and we don't. So we can talk about whatever we want, and we can share our opinions. And, you know, when Allie says, like, I'm going to get canceled, although that was in reference to Mary Earps, which we'll come on to in a moment. Like, yeah, it's jokey. And also, like, we know that these are hot button topics. We know that people feel very staunchly about one side or the other. And we feel very staunchly that, like, honestly, I guess I'll just say, like, if you're being exclusive, you're on the wrong side. And this is, I'm not going to try to restate everything that Allie just said and what Sarah Gordon said. Like, the two of them said it perfectly. I guess this leads to my final question of, like, why? Why would you put this out now at the end of your career, like you've been just hiding in your little transphobic closet for a long time, and suddenly now is the moment. Maybe you're about to retire. Maybe that was your last game of the season. Yeah.
I'm telling you now, money, because the right-wing grift is big and you can make a lot of money. This is where I get cancelled because I'm going to mention thing in another sport, swimming. Riley Gaines has made so much money being on the right wing about trans people in sport. In fact, I did see a great tweet by AOC, which was, if you'd spent more time practicing and less time hating, you wouldn't have come fifth, which I thought was genius. But that's the thing. Like, if she is retiring, she's not the biggest name. How is she going to make her money after retiring? Because she won't get commentary contracts. She won't get...
Well, maybe she would have if she hadn't put this post out. Like, I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, I'm going to go with money.
It overshadows something that I wish we should have talked about in the NWSL sector, but let's put it in here. Like, it certainly overshadowed a little bit what should have been the only headline for Angel City, which was Kristen Press's final game. They were kind of like dual headlines alongside each other. As a side note, Kristen Press almost had a goal and Alyssa Nair came up with a big save, and that was a really fun moment to watch. Everybody should go watch it. But to come back to this, yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right, Allie. I think it's like a money play post-soccer because there's no way, we just heard Sarah Gordon's statement. There's no way she's allowed back in that locker room in any form of like a way where players will embrace her and she can move forward with that team. It's impossible. It's done. All right, we are going to move into what we're calling the MERPs of it all. Talk about a player who might have made a bad move at the end of her career. Listen, it's nothing close to Elizabeth Eddy. We're not going to even try to compare the two. But, okay, we're going to talk about Mary Earps because Mary Earps released a book, which was, I think, supposed to be a biography, but I haven't read the book. I wish I had time to read the book before we talked about this. Maybe I'll read the book and then we can talk more about it. But it seems to be more of like a tell-all from what I've been seeing on social media. Mary Earps first kind of came into the crossfires because there seemed to be a bit of an ego to maybe stepping down or not making the Lionesses squad. We've chatted about that on this podcast, Allie. I was on team, like, I don't think there's an ego to it. Let's believe Mary Earps. Let's believe the best.
I don't want to bring that back up. I didn't want to bring it back up, but it looks like I was right. And that doesn't happen very often, but it looks like I was
tell
right.
people what you mean by that, because I feel like people maybe have seen snippets or maybe they've seen comments of like, oh, like Mary Earps is attacking Hannah Hampton. For the record, I do want to blanket put this out there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong if you've read it or like started to read it or whatever, but I'm taking everything I see on social media with a grain of salt because I do think things get taken and blown out of proportion, taken out of context. Mary Earps went on social media and posted something saying that she's really sad to see everything has been taken out of context and basically like read the book and you'll see that all of this flack that she's getting for basically what people are saying is like attacking Hannah Hampton it isn't actually in the right context, and she wasn't doing that. So let's get into it. Educate me, educate everybody. Talk to us.
I just want to very quickly, on the Mary Earps Instagram post, my only note on that was AH calls BS. Because that's not true. It's not true. So we'll get into the specifics of it and then we'll talk about why that's nonsense.
All right, let's do it.
So for the context of it all, in 2022, an article in The Garden from friend of the pod, Susie Rack, came out and said that Hannah Hampton had been excluded from England camp due to behavioural issues and having attitude problems. Carla Ward, who was the manager of Aston Villa, who was Hannah Hampton's manager and Aston Villa was her club at the time, also said that there'd been a bit of an issue with her at Aston Villa, but they were working on it.
Yeah. And it was that vague. Like, we don't know anything else. And it stayed that vague. Yeah.
Yeah, we still don't know what's going on. All we know is that there was behavioural issues. This is what we've been told. There was attitude problems, and we discussed it on a News in 10 at the time. She was then welcomed back in 2023 to be in the World Cup squad. Then, out of what it seems to be nowhere, 2 years later, Mary Earps retired internationally in 2025, which again we discussed at length about what that meant and what that means. Hannah Hampton has an absolute blinder of a Euros. and arguably is one of the key, if not the main reason, England won and retained the Euros title.
I'll also say there was a lot of speculation when Mary Earps retired. Everybody was kind of calling her bitter. Allie called Mary Earps bitter at the time because your point of view, just to share with everybody, was why wouldn't you just stay around, help the younger generation? No, like your ego can't handle it, and so you're out. And you didn't think that was like very team mentality. You didn't appreciate that. My counter was, I don't necessarily think we can outright say that, and I think that training and being a part of a tournament squad, whether you're playing 90 minutes or not, it's a lot, and we can't expect somebody to just donate their body to this squad if they aren't physically capable of it. We afforded that kind of like luxury, or not luxury. We afforded that benefit of the doubt to Millie Bright. Let's do that also with Mary Earps. Just to say where we were in that point.
That's where we were at that point. And then she releases this book, and it's very clear from this book that she spat her dummy out. And
I've never heard that phrase. Say it again. Spat a dummy out.
Spat her dummy out, which basically means that, you know, threw all of her toys out the pram, basically threw a hissy fit.
So you've read the book.
So the book isn't out yet, but pages of it and chapters of it have been serialized in a national newspaper in the UK. And she has done many interviews about it.
Okay, so we're holding space for like maybe something big changes when the book comes out. But talk to us. I saw one interview. Let's start here. I saw one interview with Mary Earps where she basically said, like, I have no ill will towards Hannah Hampton, but we didn't have the greatest relationship. And she made training for the World Cup and being a part of that goalkeeper squad like very difficult. And she also kind of leaned into the whole behavior issues of why Hannah Hampton was sat out. And Mary Earps really leaned into saying along the lines of, this isn't a direct quote, but was basically saying, like, I thought that we'd set this precedent that you had to, behave a certain way. And now suddenly the ethics and the morals of the team are changing. And I didn't like that. Is that the gist of what you've gotten?
Yes and no. And this is why I call BS when she says that things have been taken out of context, because this is literally chapters of her book that have been said. This has been given.
Yeah, tell us. Like, what's she's saying? People are saying she's trashing Hannah Hampton. What's she saying?
She is. She has, and her PR have given these chapters of this book to sell copies of this book. So the fact that she's saying it's taken out of context, well, your PR person has given these chapters to the newspaper. So you need to talk to your PR person if you think it's out of context.
To be fair, I'm going to buy the book. Like, I kind of need to know.
Yeah, no, I agree. But you can't say it's out of context when the chapters of the book have been given by your team to promote your book. You can't do that. Like,
Fair
it
enough.
doesn't work
Fair
that
enough.
way. It doesn't work that way. You did it. Your team has been in charge of this. She's basically, look, she won't also, and she's done that really annoying thing when she's been asked, well, what did Hannah Hampton do? Oh, no, it's not my place to say. So you've given half a story. You have said that her behaviour was unacceptable, which was an article that came out in 2022, but you won't say what it is. And that's what's getting everybody frustrated, because Hannah was 21 in 2022. Do you remember what you were like at 21? Because I was a pain in the arse.
Well, I also think it's beyond that, where everybody's basically saying, like, you are just, like, attacking Hannah Hampton for no reason in this book to sell books, to do what? To clean your own, like, side of the street, which you're not doing. Like, it seems like you're tarnishing your legacy for it. I'm so really curious. Like, I feel like I still don't know what she's saying about Hannah Hampton other than, like, Hannah Hampton wasn't good to be around, period. But I think people's question is, like, why is her name coming up in your book and your story of your life?
Exactly. So she's talking about that. And then the other thing that's really annoyed people is that she got taken, like, Serena pulled her aside and said, I want to bring Hannah back. This was in 2023. And Mary went, no, I don't like it. And Serena said, well, I believe in second chances. She seems to, like, I've spoken to Carla Ward. Carla Ward seems to think that she's, sorted herself out, and I want to bring her back in. And what, again, it seems Mary seems to have forgotten is that happened for her. Philip Neville did that for her, because when Mary came into the England squad, she was goalkeeper choice number 4. She came in during the 2019 World Cup, and the order went Karen Bardsley, Siobhan Chamberlain, Carly Telford, Mary Earps. She was given a chance when everybody had written her off. They said she was too old to come in and be England number one. She hadn't got the experience. She'd been benchwarming for Wolfsburg at the time, came over to Man United, became Man United's number one, and was given a chance. And the fact that she's then gone, but I don't want to give that to someone else. I don't believe that there can be a change in behaviour. That is what's really riled people up. And then, when you've gone off that, she still won't say what Hannah Hampton's done. And then, this is what I think has really annoyed people, is when she says, and these are her own words, it's in her book, Sarina said, Hannah is England number one right now. She's edging you, but I would like you to stay in camp. She's gone, you know what? Thought this was coming. I'm out. And that is what she has said in her book. She has said that you saying Hannah number one, you know what? I'm going to concede my place. I'm out.
I'm going to read this book, though. I'm going to read this book. Okay, but let's get into this. I feel like, because the biggest question here is, because you texted and you were like, honestly, this is Hope Solo levels of tarnishing your reputation.
Yeah, it is. She's gone full Hope Solo, because it's just coming off really salty, to use your favourite word. Like, she's coming off really bitter, and like Hope did with her book when she fell out of favour with the US Federation. This is what it feels like. It feels like Mary's gone, I left because of this person, this person, this person. I was really badly treated because of this, and this. And her takes no, ownership of her own behaviour, of her own decisions. It was, I was pushed out because of this, and this. And freely admits, she gave up her position in England because she wasn't England number one anymore. And has gone on to be like, yeah, I messaged Hannah and was like, no bad blood, but I still don't like her. I still don't like her as a person. And everybody's like, why are you bringing her into this? There is no need to bring her into this. You could have said, I mean, I can understand bringing Sarina in. I genuinely understand that, because that's a coaching decision and everything else. But you could have genuinely put in your book, I left because of coaching decisions and decided that I didn't want to put my body on the line for England anymore. And she even says, I wanted to move over for Kiara Keating of Man City. That would have been perfectly acceptable and people would not have been coming for it. It's the fact that she has gone after Hannah Hampton in this whole chapter and then had the nerve to go on social media being like, hey, this is what media does. They pit women against women. No, babes, you did that. You did that with your book because you wrote it.
I think you bring up an interesting point, Allie, which is like, it's okay to keep Sarina in it, but it's not okay to name another player. And I was actually thinking about this because I was like, listen, other players have wrote kind of like big tell-all books after their career. Obviously, Carly Lloyd wrote hers, but the first one that came to mind was Megan Rapinoe's, because Megan Rapinoe dropped some bombs in her book that like kind of outed Jill Ellis in a very classy way that you kind of had to read into it to actually out Jill Ellis. But it really did, like, before everybody knew just the extent of how bad Jill Ellis was. Like, if you read Pino's book, you were like, you finished it and you were like, wow, Jill Ellis really handled that terribly and is definitely like the devil in Megan Rapinoe's story. And that was the first look into it. But it was all in a way where it was like, even when she talked about going into a meeting with Jill Ellis, and she talked about this moment where she was like, I didn't trust what was going to happen, so I asked my captains to be there. There wasn't even a mention of who was a captain at the time. It was just, hey, I asked my captains to be there. And it was naming the head coach, but it was never naming other players. And I think that's the unspoken conduct of like, it's the same when you're on a team, when you're in the locker room. You don't air your dirty laundry to the public. You be as pissed as you want behind closed doors, but you don't do that. And it does have this stink of like throwing Hannah Hampton under the bus. And it does reek of just bitterness. And she just drew the line in the wrong place. I would have loved this book to come out in like 20 years when everybody's retired, but it has everything in it. And we get to know what happened. But that's for my own, I just like tea. And that's because I'm still curious, like, what in the world went on with the Hannah Hampton situation. And I'm kind of like, okay, if you're going to go this far over the line, then just go all the way over the line because we want to know. But I think you're right. I think that's where she crossed the line. She never needed to bring Hannah Hampton's name into it at all. She could have written about her conversation with Sarina and how displeased she was to learn that she wasn't the England number one without even writing the words Hannah Hampton on the page. And she didn't. And I think that's what is irking everybody. I agree. I think she's tarnishing her own legacy, unfortunately.
And that is it from us here at the Women's Soccer Show. Just a reminder, please check out our Patreon because we have lots of extra content on there, including News in 10, the Other 8 and the Other 8 International Edition, the full English. There'll also be some bits and pieces with me because I'm going stateside with Tim and Chris. So you can check out our adventures on there as well.
All right, and that's it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.